Just a solid conversation with my buddy Brian Lynn of Sportsmen's Alliance. There exists a threat, from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 71. This is Jim Huntsman, the host of the Western Huntsman Podcast, and I'm coming at you from the Broken Tine studio right here in Hayden, Idaho. I don't know how much longer we'll be in Hayden, Idaho, but as of right now, we're still in Hayden, Idaho. Who knows? We might stay in Hayden, Idaho. You just never know, but I'll keep you posted on that. Guys, this is going to be a really good episode, and this is going to be with Brian Lynn. He is with Sportsmen's Alliance, and we have a really good conversation. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute, but first I want to tell you this episode is brought to you by Hoffman Boots. Okay, you guys know, unless you're a brand new listener, I'm not a gear junkie. I'm not one of those guys that gets super excited about gears. I don't need to, or gears, gear. You know, I got to tell you guys, one thing that I learned about doing this podcast is I didn't know that I stuttered, and I didn't know that I mispronounce words a lot, and I get super tongue-tied all the time until I didn't know any of that until I started recording podcasts. It's been really interesting. But I think that I just get like too much to say and I try to talk too fast or something. So I appreciate you guys. I don't know why I have all you listeners out there that support the show so much in ways that you do, because, man, when I listen to this stuff back, it's like, what is wrong with me? Why did I say it like that? Why did I stutter so bad? Why did I, anyway, that's my soap opera for today. Let's get back to our sponsor, Hoffman Boots. I was telling you guys that I'm not much of a gear junkie. And I'm really not. I'm not like, I've got friends like Guy over at Western Contours. We get talking. He always gives me a hard time. I always give him a hard time. We always have a really good time in conversation and friendly banter back and forth. But he's a big time gear junkie, right? And he could tell you all the specifics about all this different gear. I'm not like that. But there is a few things that I think are important, and boots is going to be your number one thing. And where I'm not an expert in most gear items, I can tell you with confidence that I think that I am more of an expert when it comes to boots than anything else out there or anybody else out there. And here's why. It's not because I'm some badass hunter that likes to brag about how many miles he goes on Instagram. No, it's not that at all. If you guys have listened to the show, you guys know I was in the Marines, and I was, to compound that, I was in the Marine Corps Infantry. And if for those of you that don't know, our main way of transportation, our main source is our feet. And it's a lot of walking. Marine infantrymen in the Marine Corps Infantry, they like to walk. And it's not called a hike. It's not called walking. It's called a hump. And we hump a lot. And it's a lot of miles that I can say with a complete serious look on my face that I have walked thousands of miles, and it's because of my time in the Marine Corps and all the hunting I've done, previously and since. So when I say that boots are the most important thing, that comes from a place of expertise. I wore my boots so thin in the Marine Corps on one particular deployment. By the time we got to Iraq, those boots that I was wearing, that was the third continent they'd been on. And this sole was so worn down, it was like just a glorified pair of socks at that point. My feet were like leather on the bottom. I could walk barefoot across gravel without any problem. It just wasn't an issue. My feet, and it took like 10 years. Like it was 10 years after I got out of the service that my feet actually started having normal feeling back in the bottom, and I could feel things again. Anyways, that's a long way of telling you I know what I'm talking about when it comes to boots, and that's why I'm a Hoffman boot fan. You're not going to break the bank. You're going to get the first class boot, the quality that you expect, with great grip, great sole, great ankle support. They're waterproof. The company is actually quite fantastic in terms of, I know the owner, Jim Hoffman, on a personal level, he's right here in North Idaho where I'm at. Guys, it's just a great product. So I can't say enough good things about this product. And if you guys, if you want to take my advice, and I'm not twisting your arm, this isn't a big sales pitch to you. If you're not in the market or anything, just disregard this. But if you are in the market, consider Hoffman boots. And if you decide to go with a pair of Hoffman boots, I promise you won't regret it. And I could save you 10% by typing in the promo code Huntsman10 at checkout. Enough with that. Okay, guys, let's get back to this discussion. I'm recording this a week prior to me actually releasing the episode. So if something major happens, let me know. But there has been a lot happening lately with legislative actions being introduced outside of the commission in the state of Idaho. And that's in regards to wolves and all sorts of different things that's been going on. So anyways, if there's like big news that comes out and I don't bring it up, this is why, because I'll be on vacation next week with the family and kids and all that. So anyways, today's episode is with Brian Lynn. And he is with Sportsmen's Alliance, like I told you before. And Brian has a long history and track record kind of within the hunting industry. He's been a writer. He's been an editor. He's been all these things. And we have a really good conversation. It's funny, when we kind of linked up, I didn't know that where he lives and where I live, like we're practically neighbors. He's just right across the Washington border from me. And because I'm on the Idaho side, he's on the Washington side, so we still ended up doing it remotely, but that's okay, because the conversation turned out really good. Brian knows a lot about the industry of the hunting community, if that makes sense. And the Sportsmen's Alliance, for a lot of you that might not know, and I'm not going to get too in depth with this because he talks about it a lot. He's a lot more eloquent than I am with this kind of stuff. Like I was saying, I stutter a lot. Brian knows a lot about this stuff. They pay attention to all the legislation nationwide going on, whether it's anti-hunting, public land or whatever. But their big focus is on anti-hunting legislation and movement and organizations and how they kind of all work together. It's a lot of what we talk about on this show in past episodes, and so this is a really important conversation. I was going to release this episode last week, but my buddy Johnny over at Soulful Hunter Podcast, if you guys follow the Soulful Hunter Podcast with Johnny Mack, he actually had Brian on too, and he released it last week. And so I'm like, you know what? I don't want to step on Johnny's toes and have everybody listen to the same guest in the same week or whatever. I held it to this week, and I think this is just one of those organizations that if you don't know a lot about them, the Sportsmen's Alliance, you should get familiar with them and become a member, and just consider that, because for many of you out there, hunting season is one of those things where it's an actual season. Like for me, hunting is not a season. Hunting is my way of life. And sometimes season is open and sometimes season is closed. But hunting does not end for me when season closes. So if you're one of those folks that season, hunting does close when season closes, that's okay. But keep in mind that we have a lot going on throughout the year that maybe not be at the front of mind for you because you're busy with work and kids and jobs and mortgages and all the responsibilities that comes along with being an adult. The Sportsmen's Alliance is there for us when we're not paying attention, and they do a lot of stuff that they don't get credit for. And this is one of those organizations that needs more attention brought to them, and they honestly, they deserve it. And so that's why I feel like this conversation is important. It also ties nicely into what we're doing here at the Western Huntsman in terms of raising money for organizations that we're passionate about. For quarter 2 of 2021, the proceeds that we're raising from sales on our website are going to Sportsmen's Alliance. And so you're going to learn about that. And so there's a couple of ways you could do that. You can jump on the westernhuntsman.com And if you go to the merchandise tab, there is a T-shirt that says, it's got like a picture of a buck, and it says, "Don't buck with public land." And that's my little pun, play on words, whatever. Some people like that, some people don't. But if you like that T-shirt, it's a cool T-shirt. Grab you one of those T-shirts, because a pretty big portion of those proceeds are actually going towards Sportsmen's Alliance. And then the other way to do that is we have all the Tacticam products available on our website at thewesternhuntsman.com. Just go to the gear tab and check out the gear there, and that's all available. So we're taking revenue from that, and we're donating the profitable source. We're basically splitting the gross profit, and half of that's going to go towards Sportsmen's Alliance. It's a big deal. So I appreciate that. If you guys want to help support us with that, that's going to be something we're just going to continue to do. We're just going to raise money. You know, it's not like I don't do this for a living. This is not how I pay my bills with this podcast. But any revenue we generate, it is nice to kind of cover the costs of the podcast, and then also help out organizations like Sportsmen's Alliance by donating that money to them. So that's kind of the goal. That's where we're at. I'm being totally upfront and honest with you guys as to how we're working that. So please support us if you're in the mood. And with that, let's get into it with just one heck of a human being. You guys are going to really like Brian. He's just a cool dude, and he's got a lot of experience. He's very knowledgeable about the issues we talk about, and he has a way of simplifying some of the complicated matters so that, guys like me can understand. And so that's important. You'll really enjoy this episode. Let's get into it with Brian Lynn of Sportsmen's Alliance. Folks, this week I've got Brian Lynn with the Sportsmen's Alliance coming on the show, and I'm really excited about this conversation because for me, Sportsmen's Alliance is one of those, I don't want to call it a sleeper organization because it's not, but it's one of those organizations that you don't hear a lot about, I guess, in a sense like you would with some of the other organizations that are more centered around habitat and stuff like this. But Sportsmen's Alliance is right up my alley. And you're going to find out why in this conversation. And Brian is the perfect guy to talk to. And Brian, welcome to the show. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, thank you very much. Happy to be here.
You're not very far from me.
No, that was actually pretty funny to find out.
I know. We set this thing up and come to find out you're in Liberty Lake, Washington, which is, 40 minutes from my house, I think?
I don't even think it's that far, is it?
I don't know. I'm north out of Hayden, so it's
okay.
The problem is it takes me like 20 minutes to get to the freeway, and so.
Oh, okay. Okay,
there,
so yeah, probably about 40 minutes. Then.
I mean, we're close enough to be hunting and fishing buddies, though.
And maybe we should do that.
We might have to set it up. So.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. I am super excited about this. Why don't we kick this off? Give everybody kind of an idea of who you are. You've been all over the place within the hunting community, and I want people to kind of have a grasp on your background. Can we start with that?
Yeah, sure, you betcha. I've been in the industry for about, I guess it's 21 years now. Started off here in Washington. Was actually, right out of college and looking for a job, and was going to be a cop and doing the background checks and stuff and going through the process, and was living over in Seattle with my girlfriend who became my wife, and needed a job. And there was literally an ad in the Seattle PI that said, "Do you like to hunt and fish? Can you write well?" And I went to Eastern Washington University and had a degree in English. And so I was like, whoa, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
And sent in some of my writing and ended up getting hired as the editor for Texas Fishing and Hunting News.
Sweet.
So up and moved to Texas after all these good old boys started offering to take me hunting and fishing. I was like, heck yeah. So moved to Texas and did that for about a year. And then about then is when ESPN got into the outdoors business and bought Bassmaster and then launched a website. And so I was on the team that launched ESPNOutdoors.com and ran Bassmaster.com, and so did all that in the Great Outdoor Games when they did those things.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was there, I ran the sporting dog section and the conservation section, so I got to work with all the Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, quality deer management, NWTF, all these groups. Got to work with them on content and interviewing biologists and things like that. Did that for about 6 years, and then got hired as a senior editor at Outdoor Life magazine. So up and left Texas and Oklahoma and moved over to the Big Apple and lived in Jersey and commuted into Manhattan every day for 2 years or so.
What was that like? Was that like a culture shock going from Texas and Oklahoma to New York City?
Yeah, culture shock would be the mild way to put it. It's another world, man, and that's what it felt like. It felt like living two different lives, living out in the suburbs in central Jersey and taking the train in for an hour and a half every day. And then I was just, I grew up in Ephrata, Moses Lake area, the Columbia Basin. Mm-hmm. And, I was sitting there one day, went out to lunch and was walking back to the office, and I'm standing there on the corner and look up and, we're 2 blocks from the Empire State Building. And I'm like, how in the hell did I get here from little old Ephrata with 3 stoplights?
Gosh, that's crazy. That is crazy. That is quite a story. And then what happened from there?
From there, that was about 2008 when the economy went down the crapper and publishing got slaughtered, and I got laid off like everybody else. And I got off the East Coast as fast as possible.
I don't blame you.
And came back home, and I've been back here, about 2010, I guess, and freelanced for several years, 5-6 years, and did a little bit of this and that, TV and, outdoors TV and freelance writing and anything I could. And about 6.5, 7 years ago, I hooked up with the Sportsmen's Alliance, and I've been there ever since.
And what
running
is
all
your
the marketing?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What's your title at Sportsmen's Alliance?
Yeah, I'm the vice president of marketing and communications. So pretty much touch everything in the organization. We work very closely with the government affairs team to make sure the bills, what we're putting out on alerts make sense. And if I have questions, I'll call them and, figure out the best messaging there and making sure we're being accurate. Our fundraising guys and membership guys working on getting their stuff out there. So any of the marketing and communication stuff, media quotes, things like podcasts or TV stuff, and just pretty much anything outward facing.
Good deal. Well, that's awesome. And just kind of to backtrack a little bit, when you're growing up in Ephrata, Washington, and just so the listeners know, we're talking kind of central Washington, Columbia Basin, a really cool country, actually. I really enjoy it out there. But were you hunting and fishing growing up, or how did that come about?
I grew up there, and it is pretty cool little country. It is, as I was growing up there, you always think it sucks and you want to get out. Yeah. But it's pretty neat. It's got a little bit of everything. And my stepdad got me hunting in, I don't know, I was 10 or 11. I think I got my hunter's ed when I was 12 in 1985 or something like that. And mostly did bird hunting, upland bird and some duck and goose and stuff, waterfowl. And then went to college and did more deer hunting while continued to do the others. And then just got more and more into it as I got into the industry. But the dog stuff and the upland stuff has always kind of remained a favorite, even though with deer and elk and everything else, I enjoy the dog training and dog hunting sports activities of it all, just to work with the dog and that bond and the process you go through with that. The teamwork has always kind of been special for me.
Good to know, man. I knew we were going to get along. That's an old passion of mine too. Is upland game, specifically pheasants, with and working the dog. And I feel like the good old days of pheasant hunting and upland game are kind of in the past, and I'm hoping that changes. But it's still really good in Washington. What's that county? Colfax, and it's just like.
Down in the Palouse there.
Yep, that's great pheasant hunting down there.
And then back home, in Grant County, actually has a higher harvest rate there. So it's good, but it's still, this was my dog's first year, and we put a lot of miles on looking for birds.
What kind of dog?
A black lab.
Black lab. All right, cool. I'm not
Yeah.
the only lab guy when it comes to upland, huh? Everybody wants those the German short hairs, which are
hairs,
great dogs.
yeah.
Yep. So
Well, we're definitely going to have to go chase some birds this year.
we might have to work that out. I
Yeah.
have been not putting in enough time on my upland lately, and it's kind of a bummer. So I miss that a lot. I actually grew up in an area that was our ranch bordered a pheasant hunting club.
Oh,
And conveniently, these people that were paying to go hunt birds, they'd chase them all onto our property. And so we'd go out there
Yeah.
and have a ball.
I bet. That's a pretty good setup. You're
Not a
spoiled,
bad deal,
Ben.
right?
Yeah.
So, well, give us kind of an overview of Sportsmen's Alliance, as if, like, let's say a listener has never heard of Sportsmen's Alliance, which they must be living under a rock if that's the case. But give us kind of that overview of Sportsmen's Alliance and the mission.
Yeah, we're a pretty small organization, but and as you know, you kind of mentioned, a lot of folks don't know who we are, even in the industry. But we've been around for about 40 years now, and our main mission and really our genesis is to protect hunting, fishing, and trapping from the anti-hunters, from the animal rights movement. Started in Columbus, Ohio, back in 1976, 77. They came in and tried to pass a ballot initiative to ban trapping. It's kind of one of those states where if they could pass a ban on trapping through the ballot initiative, they thought they could take it to other states, which they have done. But this was back in the 70s is when the animal rights movement really started taking off here in America. And so a bunch of, wildlife biologists, businessmen, sportsmen got together and was like, okay, we have to beat this thing. And they were successful and they beat it. And then they all went back to their day jobs. And the animal rights movement went to the neighboring states and started trying to do the same thing. And people started calling and saying, hey, how did you beat them? What do we need to do? And they quickly realized that, hey, there's a need here. And so they created what was called the Wildlife Legislative Fund of America back then, which is today the Sportsmen's Alliance. And that's the main thing is we are an advocacy organization to protect and promote hunting, fishing, and trapping. We work in all 50 state legislatures, state and federal court, and at the ballot box.
So as an organization, the main focus is with the anti-hunting movement. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. And the bills that are being introduced, it's not always the anti-hunting movement introducing them. They'll have favorite politicians that will do that for them, or they're working behind the scenes. So it's to counteract their presence and their political influence.
Yeah.
We'll jump in and call them up, be like, whoa. We got a problem with this bill, and start outlining it. Sometimes the politicians are just ignorant, thinking they were doing something good. And sometimes they're diehard animal rights activists, and they don't care.
One of the things that has always bothered me and why I think something like Sportsmen's Alliance is so important is what you kind of alluded to explaining back in the beginning in the 1970s. The alliance or the organization, so to speak, kind of got that bill killed and went back to their day jobs. But the anti-hunting, anti-trapping, those organizations, they don't just go back to their normal lives and just forget about it. They're well organized, they're well funded, and they have full-time lobbyists, full-time attorneys, all these things that are taking place that are solely focused on these issues. Where the hunting community, we don't have a lot of that, with the exception of somebody or an organization like the Sportsmen's Alliance, right? And I've talked about this because as I discussed before recording, one of the fundamental ideas of my platform, the Western Huntsman, is this focus against the anti-hunting movement and these organizations. We don't have to name names yet. We can, but these organizations that are full-time activists against the hunting community. They're full-time activists against hunting, trapping, fishing, all these things that make up our lifestyle, and we don't have a lot of that fighting back. I feel like we're outnumbered. How do you feel about that? Is that I don't know how.
That's exactly right.
Is it? Okay.
No, and like you said, well-funded, huge organizations. Humane Society of the United States. That's public enemy number one for us as hunters.
For sure. Everybody calls out PETA all the time, but not a lot is discussed about the Humane Society of the United States, and I agree, they're public enemy number one.
Yeah, no, PETA is your shock value tabloid type stuff that gets crazy, whatever. Mm-hmm. Where they're the most dangerous is influencing the youth. There's an entire website, at least there used to be, PETA 2, that was dedicated to middle school and high school kids on how to, and basically brainwashing them and how to stand up to your parents and how to become vegan and how to do this and write letters and protest and everything else. That's where they're the most dangerous.
Oh, that drives me nuts.
But, groups like the Humane Society of the United States, and there's others, Center for Biological Diversity and such, but HSUS is number one. Largest anti-hunting organization in the world. $200 million yearly budget. I mean, they can buy whatever they want, do whatever they want. So we're really outgunned. Outsized.
Yeah. And they were the ones behind the bear ban recently in California with Senator Weiner out there. I always like to bring up his name just to be sarcastic and obnoxious.
We'll get along great.
I put so many emails and calls into his office. I got no responses. I just wanted to get him on the show. I wanted him to personally come on the show and explain why somebody in California, in San Francisco, California, with no bears, has any business meddling in wildlife management. I just wanted, which kind of figures, never got a response. So anyways, getting back to that, what you said, the HSUS, and the other one you mentioned, the Center for Biological Diversity, that is another big one out there. And what really gets me with these organizations, and then I'd like to kind of circle back to Sportsmen's Alliance after that, but is they're really good at marketing. They're really good at pulling these like highly emotional topics. Going back to the bear ban. We need to stop trophy hunting in California. Our bears need us. And how does that not play into the emotions of folks that are not hunters, are not experienced? They don't know the actual science and data behind what hunting is and how these animals are harvested. And, the using terms like trophy hunting as if we're just going out to kill a bear, right? They're really good at that. How do we counter their marketing messages when it comes to the average person that is they're not necessarily anti-hunter, they're not necessarily pro-hunting, they're just they don't really have a thought, but they could be swayed either way. You know what I mean?
That's the big topic right now, and the billion-dollar question. It's one, we're outgunned size and money-wise. I mean, HSUS has almost 600 employees. That's more than NASA.
Yeah. That's crazy. I didn't put it into that perspective.
Yeah. So they have like 6. So we're outgunned like that. We're behind the 8 ball just because how things are set up in that we have to play defense. Mm-hmm. They get to pick and choose what to go after and when to go after it. So they can have everything, all their ducks in a row and go after it just by the nature of this is already open. They can try to shut it down. So we're already in a defensive position just of how the game is set up to scramble and try to protect everything. And then, as you said, from a messaging standpoint, it's compelling, emotional messaging that really plays well with urban voters and those who are, for lack of a better term, ignorant about wildlife management, Pittman-Robertson dollars, and the history of North American wildlife conservation. Yeah. And so it's a very tough nut to crack. And they have sound bites, like you said, trophy hunting. 80% of the country approves of hunting as a wildlife management tool. It drops to like 30% when you say trophy hunting.
Yeah.
Even though there's no such thing, there isn't a context. There's wanton waste laws here. And when you're talking Africa, Nothing gets wasted in Africa. It doesn't matter. It's a catch-all phrase that instantly turns the tide against us, and we have to overcome that. So they have these sound bites that work, and our story is very long, very detailed, historic, facts, figures, boring. People's eyes will glaze over.
Yep.
So it's tough.
That's a challenge. That's a big time challenge, because you're right. In that light, somebody can make a really profound point in a single tweet against hunting. The same argument cannot be made for hunting in a single tweet. And the average American that isn't within the hunting community or active as a hunter or an outdoorsman or trapping, they don't even know what the North American model of wildlife conservation is. They've never even heard of it.
No.
And
beyond that, most people don't remember a time when there wasn't abundant wildlife.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Yeah.
For the couple of generations now, wildlife has been abundant. They don't remember when there was a dearth of wildlife. So they don't know what has taken place historically. They're living in a vacuum.
So what is the big focus over the last, let's say, year or so for Sportsmen's Alliance? Like what are you guys focusing on now legislatively, or anything that like listeners should know about?
Holy cow. Well, let's see. I don't know how our government affairs team does it. There's 2 full-time guys. There's a contract guy, and we have lawyers on retainer that we work with. But those guys have their state net system set up where it's monitoring everything by keywords, pulls in thousands and thousands of bills that get introduced in all 50 state legislatures. Give it a quick read once over. Okay, this applies, this doesn't apply. They whittle it down to probably 1,000 bills across all 50 states, and they'll look at the makeup of different congressional, platforms, and you're like, okay, this probably isn't going anywhere. And they work it down to, I think right now they're actively monitoring 300 different bills and making calls on probably a good 2/3 of those in letters. So you're talking hundreds of them. Like, we put out alerts on our website and social media and stuff, but that's just the tip of the iceberg of what they're actually working on. Those are like, okay, we need to call now. Like, we've been trying to be good in the back end and working with you and whatever, but it's not working now. So now it's time to mobilize. But so they're working on everything. Like you said, the California bill to stop bear hunting. That was a big one that gets headlines. Mm-hmm. There's all sorts of stuff. There's, as we know here in Washington, for the last year, one of the big pushes has been to end coyote contests.
Coyote contests, and in the spring bear, there's talk of ending the spring bear hunt.
Yeah, but the coyote contest is interesting. It started last year, and within that one little issue, you kind of get a synopsis. It's a microcosm of what the animal rights movement has planned. It started in New Mexico, specifically coyote contests on public land, and that got banned. It moved up from there, up to Oregon, up to Washington, up to Montana, over to Wisconsin, over to New York, New Jersey, and then it came back to Nevada. But as it moved north and then east across the country, and it was the same language getting introduced, so very similar, but it started to morph. It went from coyote contests to wildlife contests. Any wildlife contest, anything involving a prize, anything involving entertainment.
Would that include like a bass fishing tournament?
The fishing tournaments for the time were usually classified differently,
okay.
Or they're usually classified within state game codes differently. So that was protected. Where it was catching things would be your field trials for dogs, because like in Oregon, in some places in the code, wildlife is just ducks, pheasant, whatever, whether it's domestically raised and used or not. So it's left to interpretation. It would also end, if you're a sportsman's club, say in Wisconsin, having a big buck contest.
Yeah.
It was to the point that it was you and I go out coyote hunting, and we bet on who's going to get the most coyotes or who shoots the most greenheads out of the duck blind. That's two people engaged in a wager where there is a prize. But it even went further. It was just entertainment. So now anything's falling under it, right? How do you define entertainment?
It's such
and it was
a broad
even
term.
socially, then it was even just promotion of an event. So you post on it on social media, now you're guilty of it. By the time it wrapped all the way around the country and came back to the West in Nevada, it was carrying a felony penalty.
Holy cow, man.
So it was the same thing as manslaughter. So that's where the animal rights movement goes. It morphed from one thing to very broad to carrying a felony penalty, equating human life with animal life.
It's such an easy thing to sell too from their end. You know, you could so take, they're having a coyote shooting competition, and then they take pictures of a bunch of dead coyotes as if they all were shot on the same 100-acre farm by 100 people that were out there just kind of like the Wild West. You know, it's so easy to leave out the details of what a coyote competition is. I mean, a lot of these guys are driving like hours from one end of the competition to the. These are huge, broad competitions. People just don't understand them. What would an episode of the Western Huntsman Podcast be without me mentioning our sponsors that make this show possible? Guys, check out Phelps Game Calls, probably our oldest sponsor. And Phelps Game Calls is one of those companies that inspires me and inspires a lot of people because it started in a garage, and now it's one of the leading call companies in the industry. So I don't care if you're going out to call turkeys, I don't care if you're going out to call in bears or coyotes, or obviously the number one mainstay of Phelps Game Calls, bugling in the mighty Wapiti. That's right, that's my favorite game calls. For me, I use the Renegade and the Maverick and the Phelps Pink signature call. I love all these calls, whether you're using diaphragms, you need bugle tubes, you need external calls. They have it all. They have deer calls. They're coming out with new stuff all the time. And Phelps Game Calls are all manufactured right here in the United States. Started by a really cool dude that's been on the show a few times. His name is Jason Phelps. It's one of those companies that you could just trust. You can count on. The gear, the products are great. They're American made and they're ready to go. Get on PhelpsGameCalls.com and check out all the calls that are available. And don't forget to use promo code Huntsman10 for 10% off of your Phelps Game Call order. Next we got Scree Gear, another one of the OG sponsors of the Western Huntsman Podcast. Guys, I love Scree Gear. You got to check out Scree Gear. If you're running around the woods in some Walmart camo or something because you think that high-end technical hunting apparel is too expensive, you haven't been on the Scree Gear website. I love the hard scrabble pants. You know what? They got these Bridger glassing mitts, and I'm telling you, they will change your life. I've got a pair of these Bridger glassing mitts, and they're just freaking incredible. They kept me on the mountain this last winter a lot longer than I usually would because my hands are like one of the first things that goes cold when I'm sitting there just glassing up, whether I'm wolf hunting or whatever. You got to check out the Bridger glassing mitts. It's like one of my favorite things that they've got. And they're also coming out with a new camo pattern. It's available right now for pre-order, but they've also got the other patterns still available. Jump on there and check out Scree because this company backs up their stuff. It's got a lifetime warranty. It's also got the VIP sizing guarantee, which means if you order up a pair of pants, or let's say you get the hard scrabble vest and it doesn't fit right, it comes with a pre-packaged return slip that you just throw on the package and send it back, and they send you the right size. You can't beat it. Guys, the price point of Scree in comparison to the other high-end technical apparel that's available out there will blow your mind. Check it out. ScreeGear.com. Promo code The Western Huntsman for 15% off and free shipping. Tacticam is the final one on this list today. Folks, if you are interested in or have done in the past filming your hunts, you've got to check out the Tacticam. I use the Tacticam 5.0. I've got a few of them, and I can control like 2 or 3 of them from my app. They're super cool to get those POV or just filming your hunt in general, which I highly recommend because you could really kind of coach yourself and learn some of the mistakes that maybe you're not paying attention to in the field when you're out there, especially like calling in that big bull. Get it on camera. Get it on film so you can go back and watch it. That's what I do. and it's made me a better hunter. And there's no better way to do that than with Tacticam. Tacticam has got all the attachments. You could do a head harness, you could do a flex clamp, you could attach it to your shoulder, you could mount it to your weapon where that's legal in different states and different units, so make sure you're checking that, and get all these different angles and film your hunt and put it, whether you want to put it on YouTube to get put out the big time hunting content, or you just want to keep it for yourself for memories. Tacticam has you covered. They've also got the Reveal Cell Cam, which I love. It'll send you pictures in real time and let you know what's going on, whether you're managing property for like whitetails or whatever. I use it to kind of as security on my property. If I've got riffraff coming on the property, I'll know about it immediately. Also, if I have a grizzly bear wandering on the property, I know not to just send the kids out. Love that Reveal Cell Cam. You guys got to get you one of those. We're going to have some really cool giveaways coming up with Tacticam, so stay tuned for that, because they also have other things like the film through scope. You can film right through the scope, whether you're target shooting or hunting, get that shot in. Again, check your state regulations, whether or not that's legal or not. Either way, go to tacticam.com, check it out, and stay tuned for some really kick-ass giveaways coming down the pike from Tacticam. So let's get back into it. Here we go.
Well, and then we can be our own worst enemy.
That's
posting videos of it, and that's what they jumped on. That's what spurred a lot of this, was video taken in Oregon and taken in Maryland and taken other places, and they stream it together. Guys carrying coyotes and laughing and throwing and whatever else, and then they put sad music with it and everything else. And as you said, it's taken out of context. It looks like it's just an open slaughter that took place in one afternoon. It's just bad optics for us, and that is one example of us doing it to ourselves.
What do you think the biggest threat to hunters is?
Urbanization. This all eventually boils down to urban versus rural. The urban folks, by and large, aren't educated on wildlife management, conservation, that historic Pittman-Robertson dollars, all this stuff that makes up the model. They don't know anything about it. Wildlife just exists. They don't know about it, and they don't have to deal with the consequences and repercussions of a vote against it. They aren't, the San Francisco guy, Wiener, when the bears go out of control and become too many of them, his constituents in downtown San Francisco who are going to raves and partying until 4 a.m. don't have to deal with a bear walking down the street. That's the people out on the urban suburban division there that have to deal with the bears that are out of control. Same as here in Washington, Stevens County ranchers have to deal with wolves and mountain lions, and the folks in Seattle don't have to. It's not affecting them.
It's not affecting them.
So
it's not
they have no skin in the game. Yeah. So, and then it's also an urban vote problem because they have the voting blocks.
Yeah, that's what's scary.
Yeah.
If you look at that and break it down like to a square mile, the amount of voters in an urban area per square mile versus somewhere like where I live. We live out of town. We're technically not even within city limits where we live, and there's 3 voters in a square mile where I live versus 3,000. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's a huge problem, and I want to go back and kind of touch on what you were talking about in terms of hunters doing it to ourselves and what we're doing to damage the image because how I classify it is there's 3 groups in America when we're talking on this subject. You've got the hunters, and it doesn't matter if they were, they've been hunters since they were in diapers, or they're like adult onset hunters and they're just into the whole outdoors lifestyle. You have the anti-hunters. There's really not much we could do with them except fight, right? We're not going to change their mind, is what I mean by that.
Yep.
And then we have the critical part, which is probably the largest portion of the population, which is that critical, whether urban or rural. These folks that are on the fence with it, they don't have it's not a daily thought for them. They don't. It's not a conversation. And you had pointed out, you hate to say the word ignorance, but I don't look at the word ignorance is not necessarily a rude thing to say. It's not a derogatory term. It's I'm ignorant in a lot of things, right? Everybody has things that they're ignorant in, but in that population, that portion of the population, they're not really pro-hunting, they're not really anti-hunting. They very much are ignorant on the topic of that. But when somebody, and I've brought this up on my podcast, sorry guys, I know I've mentioned this many times, but you could tell this was months ago, and I'm still pissed off about it. The kids that shot the buck, that hung it in the garage gutted, upside down, poured beer into the cavity of the buck, and had one of the mullet-wearing hillbillies get under it, chugging the bloody beer coming out of the deer's mouth. Yeah. It was posted on Facebook. It had thousands of views. I think that I probably went pretty gray in the beard after that. And I'm just a young, strapping 40-year-old man, right? And now I've got all this gray in my beard. But it's stuff like that. The imagery, the optics, how does that, somebody that is in that group, that category that we're talking about, they're not pro-hunting, they're not anti-hunting, when they see a video like that, so disrespectful, and showing all the blood and guts and this bloody beer coming out of the mouth, and these guys are just laughing, man, what do people think when they post something like that? How does that affect the mission of Sportsmen's Alliance when you see stuff like that?
Yeah, hugely. I mean, there's the whole ambassador side of things, and I'm not ever going to try to be the police. I'm not telling people not to post things. It kind of goes back to, the Supreme Court ruling on pornography. Mm-hmm. The justice said, I don't know what it is, but I know it when I see it. Yeah. I don't have problems with grip and grins. I don't have problems with any of that.
And I don't either.
But when you get into pornography, almost, of this stuff where it's disrespectful, we're sitting here trying to protect hunting. We're trying to educate people on the North American model and why hunters care and why hunters have played such an integral role and why everybody else needs them. And then in one video, it can be undermined in just seconds.
Mm-hmm. Remember the video of those kids beating up that deer that was wounded? And those kind of things, and how I want to portray that is I feel like about 95%, and maybe I'm shooting a little high, 95% of hunters are pretty ethical, and they've got that kind of stuff in mind. It's that 5% that's killing us. And
beyond that, how it impacts our mission is, now this happened in Canada, so it doesn't really, we're not real active in Canada at all, but it's an example of what happens, and it happens every day here in America, is when the guy used a spear to kill the bear, I believe it was, a couple of years ago, chucked the spear at him and went nuts, and they went viral. Well, right after that, the province took away the use of spears for animals, even though it's ethical and has been being used for, millennia.
Yep, couple thousand
They removed that. So that's what happens is the guys with the coyote contest showing these bad optics and videos and posting it, they take it and use it against us to ban something. And now not only are we fighting to save something, we are fighting uphill against bad optics in somebody with a $200 million budget and an emotional message.
Who have the easy ability to grab a hold of those videos and turn them into commercials for their cause. And
and raise more money.
And I want people to understand too. For me, I'll give you a great example. The nighttime Texas hog hunting thing. The thermal imaging. They're going out there and they're blasting these wild hogs on the farms and whatnot. For me, I love watching those. I get a kick out of that. Man, they're just overrun with these wild pigs and they're everywhere. And I like seeing that. However, when I do see it, I always cringe because I have like this family friend. She was my mom's one of her best friends, right? And she is just not into hunting at all. She does not like it. On Facebook you could do the mad face when I post a hunting picture or something, she'll give me the mad face on it. and I've known her my whole life, so
Yeah.
I don't want to make her mad, but I want to talk about, in your opinion, because you've been in the hunting industry for a long time, and you in your unique position now, I think, are tuned into this exact issue a lot more than a lot of people are. In your opinion, like what do you think is acceptable in terms of, because like you said, you're good with grip and grins, right? And you talked about, at what point does it become, what you were using the term pornography earlier, at what point does it become detrimental on social media for hunters?
Yeah, I mean, that's tough, right? Like that gets back to the I don't know what it is, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it type thing, the idea, and it's like that's hard to do. I think probably for most people, it's when the disrespect comes in.
Yeah.
You mentioned the guys pouring the beer down, drinking it from the carcass. I don't know what the hell's going on right anymore, but there's some people like posing naked with turkeys or moose skulls or something.
What the hell is wrong with people? You pose naked with your dick.
Get
like,
it.
what is that? Some weird fetish? Like, what?
Yeah, I don't know.
What is wrong with
like
people?
when it's I don't know. It's tough because it's like, can this be used against you? I mean, it's just a simple question to ask yourself. Like, is this respectful? Could it be used against me? I work with my old fraternity at Eastern Washington University, and I've been mentoring them and been the chapter advisor for the last 10 years or so. They're 18 to 22-year-old kids, and they like to drink beer. And they do a lot of stupid things because they're 18 to 22-year-old kids, right?
We all did.
So I always tell them, write tomorrow's headline. What's tomorrow's headline going to say about this action or that action?
It's a great way
this
to put
idea you have. What's tomorrow's headline?
Yeah.
So, like, if you're even have to ask yourself, is this a good idea to post, or could this be taken out of context? It probably can. Like, if you have to sit there and wonder if it's good or bad, it's probably not good.
Yeah.
Or it probably can be used. So write tomorrow's headline. What's the absolutely worst thing that could be said about this photo or video? And there's your answer.
It's interesting, man. I love that take on it. Consider it as a headline. How would this play out? Would this be a negative or a positive headline? How would you react to it? That's a great way to put it.
What's the worst thing that could be said? If you're sitting there smiling with the dead animal, okay. A lot of people are gonna be like, okay, he hunts. I know people that hunt, even if they're not hunters.
Yeah, exactly.
Respectful,
that's
whatever.
not
even if you're smiling, not a big deal.
If
you're doing something stupid, then yeah.
And you are doing something stupid. Even so, I was 18 once, believe it or not, and we even had like electricity and stuff back then. But when I was 18, I did really dumb stuff. I all the way into my mid-20s did really stupid things, and I'm actually thankful that there was no social media back then. You know what I mean? So I kind of feel bad for the 18-year-olds of today that have to deal with social media and that stuff that just gets put out into the interwaves there and is always there. But to your point, even when I did those stupid things, I knew they were dumb. It's not that it makes you dumb to do dumb things at 18 years old. It means that you don't grasp quite yet the overall consequences of the bigger picture. You know what I mean? And so I was lucky enough to harvest a turkey last week. I got him in the head, and it made a mess of the head. And so when I posted the picture, I was pretty excited about this turkey. It's the first one I've like really called in like that and had them all fired up, and nice. It was a great time. But I made sure that all the pictures did not have the head in it, and I think that that's important, just because it really did. It made a mess, and that would be bad optics. Are there other things that you see on a consistent basis that you'd want like you think to yourself, man, I wish I could tell this guy or this gal, don't do it like that. Do it like this. Is there anything like that you see on social media that people should be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, some of the whole posing naked or doing like riding the animal, it's like.
Let me stop you right there,
I just
Brian.
don't get it.
What do you mean? I've heard of the posing naked thing. I haven't seen any of that. Is that like a new thing?
I guess, I don't know what it is. Like, I just don't get it. I've seen it out there, and I'm like, I don't get it. Like, I just seriously, again, one of my fraternity kids posted the turkeys. He went on a turkey hunt. Great photos, respectful photos, hunting, respectful with this. And then they were up in the Lake Roosevelt area, and it was hot last week or 2 weeks ago, and they jumped in the lake and in their boxers or whatever and had a beer, and one of them held up the photo. So he's standing there in his boxers with a beer and a turkey, and it was on social media. And I'm like, okay, I can finally ask somebody this.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is this? Well, is this a new thing going on? Like, help me understand this, and he took it down. He was like, well, we just jumped in the lake and happened to take a picture. It wasn't like a staged thing, but there's people out there staging them.
Yeah. There's a difference between staging. I could see that.
Yeah.
And at least he had, and it goes back to, he's at that age group where, they're having fun. They're not thinking about the consequences or the overall imagery of this, but, the naked thing bothers me, man. I
don't
hope
get
that
it.
Doesn't become a trend.
Yeah. Well, it kind of is. I've seen it. And then, people holding ducks in their mouths, or
yeah.
I don't know if some of the kissing thing is like back in the old days, I'm talking 90s, early 2000s, whatever. Jimmy Houston used to kiss the bass and throw it away. I don't know if it's an evolution of that or what, but game in their mouth, holding it like, well, a retriever or something, biting its head or what, I don't know. So just dumb things like that, like, one, I don't understand. Two, why are you putting it out there? And a lot of it, I think, boils down to social media and getting attention and likes and up in your algorithm and influencer type people. So
I agree with that completely. What do you say to the dude that is out there and he's posting tasteless pictures that are pretty negative imagery wise? That says, well, I don't care. This is who I am. I'm a hunter, and I don't care who's offended by it. You get that kind of commentary.
Yeah.
What would you say to a guy like that?
Well, I mean, you can try to reason and ask him, like, what's the benefit here? And it's like, oh, I'm not going to be told what to do, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, great, thanks. I mean, there's nothing to say with somebody that's going to be unreasonable. So just go out there and try to be a better ambassador. Try to educate people within your sphere of influence so they have a positive image of hunting and hunters and can understand that messaging, enough to, when they hear something or see something, they go, I'm going to at least withhold this until I talk to a hunter that I know or I get more information.
I wish there was just a better way to get through to people like that, because it's not like you could sit there and just have a reasonable conversation with them. If you enjoy hunting, you should probably stop posting pictures like that. Well, I don't care. I do what I want. I'm so hard-headed that it doesn't matter. I'm going to post this, and I don't care who it offends.
Yeah,
great.
And, yeah, and a lot of it depends on their motivations too.
Yeah,
some are like just dumb. Some are looking for fame and controversy.
Yeah,
We've run into that.
Right. You're exactly right.
People looking for controversy to be persecuted so they can then become a martyr and get sponsorships or whatever, stand with XYZ person. Do that. Oh, no, we got to, there's a lot of this fake martyrdom going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had it happen, the people have called us like, hey, these people need help, and I'll call them up, and has been in the news, CNN and everything else, African game, and, their kids or women or whatever being persecuted. And I'm like, well, tell me about this. How did these pictures get? Oh, well, they have a page, and it's called this and that. And I'm like, so you guys put the pictures up and you put them out there. So you're inviting this, but you're worried about your kids now. Like, it's pretty easy. Take the pictures down and just be quiet. But no, a lot of them want the attention and want to try to capitalize on it. So there's a bunch of different motivations going on.
Interesting. Yeah, we could do a lot of podcasts on this topic, man. We can keep going. I want to circle back and make sure we're getting the message about Sportsmen's Alliance out, and especially, I know I mentioned it in the intro, but for you guys listening, quarter two of 2021 is the we have Sportsmen's Alliance as the designated recipient of all of our public land T-shirts. The revenue that we're donating for the cause. So Sportsmen's Alliance is our cause for this quarter. And so if you guys have not gotten a T-shirt yet, jump on the westernhuntsman.com, go to the merchandise tab, find the T-shirt that says "Don't Buck with Public Land," and get you one, because you're going to get a cool T-shirt, and the money goes to a great cause there. So getting back to this great cause, Brian, can we talk about some of before we started recording, we touched on the grizzly bear topic. I'd really like to kind of investigate that one. What's going on with that? Where are we at with it? And let's walk through that one for a minute.
Yeah, so grizzly bears, we're involved in that lawsuit. We're in there with SCI and Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and a bunch of others too.
For people that don't know, can you go over what the lawsuit is?
Yeah, so there was grizzly bears in Yellowstone, and they were on the endangered species list, and they have now met every threshold for delisting.
And when did they meet those thresholds?
Oh, it's been a couple of years now.
Yeah.
It's been several years. 2014, I think, is when the original case came out.
That's what's sticking out to me is 2014, 2015, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I think it was, I can find it, but I think it was 2014 when the first lawsuit was filed.
Point being is it's not like they just hit this threshold, last month. It's been a long time. So, okay.
And it's and it's a conservative estimate. Everything with this biology and conservation is we take the most conservative estimates of numbers and move forward with that. So by some, there's twice as many, by other accounts, more liberal, estimations, there's twice as many grizzly bears as we're saying, and they're still at the most conservative level, still a way above delisting thresholds. And so they've are now expanding their range into Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming, and it's basically no management. It's reactive management. You've got a problem bear, you got an attack, you got depredations, then they'll take care of it. So we're involved in that lawsuit. That lawsuit very closely mirrors the lawsuit we've been involved in for 12 or 15 years, which is delisting the wolves in the Great Lake states. Yep. Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin. The wolves there were never really completely extirpated. There's always been wolves. Now they're growing, and there are a ton of wolves back there. And we've been trying to get them off the endangered species list for 10, 12 years now.
So, and that's similar.
We've delisted them 3 times.
That's similar to, the litigation that was going on when Idaho met the wolf objective. Yeah. And it took, it was about a decade.
An act of Congress.
An act of Congress.
It literally took an act of Congress. And we've delisted the Great Lakes wolves 3 times. And the Humane Society of the United States goes, finds an activist judge, files an appeal in that circuit, and gets it stayed on technicalities. Yeah. It's not about populations anymore. Nobody's saying that they haven't reached that. Now it's what's the impact, both for grizzlies and wolves, if we remove these populations, the distinct population segments, is what they're called, distinct population segments. Their numbers start to drop. How does that impact other distinct population segments in other parts of the country? Because of genetic diversity and needing them. So that's the argument. We lost and won the last appeal. With I'm trying to get this straight. With the we lost and won in that they were put back on the endangered species list, the wolves, and the grizzly bears parallel this court case. But the courts ruled in our favor that Fish and Wildlife has the authority to list and delist distinct population segments.
Did you say the United States Fish and Wildlife? Just make sure I heard you right. Okay.
Yes, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Humane Society of the United States argued that, nope, it's a one-way street. You can only list distinct population segments. You can't delist them. And the judge said, no, disagreed with that. So that is a huge, huge piece for us. So now Fish and Wildlife, there's a path forward. Fish and Wildlife has to go through, cross the T's, dot the I's, and meet all the arguments or all the hoops to jump through for delisting.
For the Great Lake wolves or the grizzly bears?
Well, the wolves gets messy because then Trump delisted all the lower 48 state wolves, so they're delisted right now. Mm-hmm. But Humane Society, Center for Biological Diversity, and a bunch of others are suing. We're also named interveners in that case to try to keep that delisting viable. As that's going on concurrently, our case is still active, and that path forward for both grizzlies and Great Lakes wolves is going forward, and Fish and Wildlife is working through the court mandated arguments that they have to meet. The issue will then become, once they do that in a year or 2 years, they'll sue on something else. It's just red tape.
Can I want to ask you like kind of a weird question along those lines with somebody like the Humane Society of the United States or Center for Biological Diversity. Is there an economic factor for them by?
Oh, hell yeah.
Like, can you talk about what the economic factor is for them when it comes to these lawsuits and just their movement in general? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, well, they're cash cows.
They're
cash cows for them. They can raise so much money from the general public, from celebrities. Again, the emotional messaging, iconic species, megafauna, whatever they call them, and show wolves and wolf pups and grizzlies and little cubs and everything. And it's a cash cow, huge cash cow. Plus, Center for Biological Diversity likes to use the Equal Justice Act and then get their money back. And the taxpayers pay for that. So they don't have any legal costs.
Yeah.
If they win a ruling, they have no legal costs. The taxpayer actually pays for it. So it's a huge cash cow. It's a huge win. They aren't arguing the science of delisting the red-footed salamander.
Yeah, I know, right? Because
it's only when it's huntable species that get delisted.
Because it's a lot easier to make a case and raise money when we're talking about a nice cuddly grizzly bear or an amazing wolf and the way they portray them, and it's so easy to raise money that way. Just to put it into perspective, the Humane Society of the United States, the CEO, the salary alone is $268,386, and so. However, it looks like the overall compensation package is $4 million.
Yeah. The salary is that, but there's a whole lot more behind it.
Exactly. Everybody kind of focuses on the salary. We're not talking about there's a lot of other ways that a CEO and anybody else within the organization can make money. And I want to say that from a perspective is anybody who listens to this show, you guys know I am a American capitalist, and I would never disparage somebody for the kind of living that they can make within a free society, right? But this is interesting because of the nature of what this organization is, and they're supposedly a nonprofit, and
they're supposedly for cats and dogs in shelters. Everybody thinks they are an umbrella organization for every local humane society in the nation. They're not. They have absolutely nothing to do with it. Less than 1% of their funding goes to hands-on shelters.
Where does their funding go? Do you know? Do you know how that breaks down in terms of besides the CEO?
The numbers are out there. A lot of it goes right back into fundraising. A huge chunk of it goes back into fundraising. I can't remember the exact numbers. Huge chunk of it goes into fundraising, overhead, and lawyers.
That's what I wanted to ask you, though, because they do have a lot of the lawyers and lobbyists and all these things that they have the money for. I'd be super curious to kind of compare something like the Humane Society of the United States, how their funding distributes to wildlife in terms of conservation, and compare that number against the incredibly large number of the Pittman-Robertson. Yeah, you know what I mean?
It's laughable. I've looked into that
It'd be
as
such an
possible
in-your-face
stories, and
number. Yeah.
oh yeah, no, they have this. I can't remember what it's called. Humane Society, Wildlife, something. It's basically where you can put your land into easements, and they promote on their site, all 50 states and this and this and this. If you look at, I mean, there's some here around Spokane. It's literally like 1 acre.
Mm-hmm.
1 acre that somebody has, or 3 acres, or 10 acres. These little chunks of urban lands or suburban lands. I mean, they have a few bigger ones, but I mean, it's a pittance.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
serious
it's
pittance.
nothing.
You just compare it to Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation or Ducks Unlimited, just one of those two organizations, and it doesn't even stack up, and it's not even close.
Not even close. I mean, not even. You can't. It's apples to oranges in terms of comparison. So that's always an interesting aspect of it, because that money, I've been saying this for a long time. We, as hunters, we need our own lobbyists. We need our own attorneys that are the way to get those is through funding, and we lack that part of it.
And that's our big thing is we're not. I just had this conversation this weekend about turkey hunting with some guys. Sportsmen's Alliance is not a conservation organization, and there's some others out there. And sometimes their membership hammers them. I've seen them on Facebook, like, oh, they're not doing enough stream cleanups or whatever. It's like, that's not our mission.
Yeah,
we're not a conservation organization. I don't have a chunk of land I can hold up, or a critter, an elk, a deer, turkey, duck. I don't have that. I can't do that. I'm not a conservation organization. What we are is an advocacy organization. What I have to hold up is a legal document. It's like buying insurance. Only you don't know you need the insurance until after you've lost your stuff. If we fail, when we lose, everybody loses. The industry loses. You lose time of field. Industry guys lose a customer because a season gets lost, gets taken away. Yep. A methamphetamine or something gets taken away. And I keep winning. If we keep winning, y'all don't even know what's happening.
I know. That's the interesting part with Sportsmen's Alliance. Yeah, you guys are, and that's as we kind of wrap this up on those lines. Let's talk about how hunters, because how I've kind of described the Sportsmen's Alliance is, so the Sportsmen's Alliance is our first firewall. There, you guys are kind of. It's hard to explain in a way that. Because I don't want to like dumb it down, but you guys are the firewall. You guys are the ones that are paying attention to the nation or the national legislative actions being taken against hunting. You're not the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, where you go restore habitat, like you were saying, or introduce elk into Kentucky, or the Mule Deer Foundation. All those kind of missions that we all love, right? I mean, I support those organizations for sure. But your mission is specific and more geared towards legislative action that is anti-hunting by nature and anti-trapping by nature. And I think that's an important distinction, because we need both. We need both organizations. We need the conservation groups for sure. That's what's one of the huge justifications for hunting is our conservation efforts.
Exactly.
But we also need the organization that is focused on the mission that you guys have, and that's why it's important. So I want to ask, for people listening to this, when they understand that and come to the realization how important Sportsmen's Alliance is, how can they help?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like you said, if you look at our logo, it's kind of like a triangle. As we're rebranding that, I'm like, we're the tip of the spear. We're the first ones in there. We're small, but we get penetration, and it's the weight of the industry and the weight of our members and hunters in general that are behind us that allow us to do this and do what we do. And eventually it all does come down to lobbying and lawyers, because that's where it's going to be settled, is in the courts and in the legislatures, and that takes money.
That's a huge. I want to reiterate that point, Brian. It is lawyers and lobbyists that, as sometimes that might make us cringe as hunters.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? We might cringe at that, but that is the reality. Okay.
That's where it's all going to be settled. That's where it will all be settled, And so the bigger voice we have, obviously we're probably never going to be a $200 million organization, but we're in the ring, lightweights punching with extreme heavyweights with HSUS. The more money we can raise, the more we can fight back, the more people who pick up the phone when we ask them to call politicians, hammer them with emails. Calls work the best. Emails are easy to slide into a folder or not pay attention to. If you're calling them, they get sick and tired of it real quick. 10 people call, they get nervous.
Yeah.
And then they'll say to us, okay, call off the dogs. And then that's when we step on the neck. Nope, keep calling. And then they're like, okay, we'll negotiate. We'll do whatever. We'll kill it. So the more people we have involved in helping us, the better. You can become a member. The entry level membership is $35 a year.
Yeah, can we go through?
Goes up from there.
Yeah, you've got the $35 sustaining membership, and then you got the $50 protecting membership, advancing membership, sponsor membership. Oh, you can go way up here. Holy
you can do. We got individual memberships. We have club memberships. So if your local club, sporting dog club, rod and gun club wants to be a part of this, there's club memberships. There's business
partnerships. Yep.
So we're talking everything from the big boys at Vista, Federal, Winchester, Browning, down to mom and pop shops can be a part of the business partnership. It's tax deductible because we're a 501c3 and C4, and it's protecting your business interests. So there's any number of ways you can join and become a member or donate. Youth programming we do have. And so whatever floats your boat and however you want to get involved, it's appreciated and will go to a good cause. We have great ratings, and I think it's 86% or something like that goes
it was high.
Directly to programming.
Yep, it's high. It's like way out of bounds. Like if you compare that rating against most of the anti-hunting organizations, in fact, I dare to say all of them, it's not even comparable. Like So this is great. So guys listening, if this is your cup of tea, I recommend at least getting the $35 sustaining membership. In fact, I would venture to guess I'll bet mine expired. I'll bet I need to renew. So I better put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to do I think I'm going to do either the $50 or the $100 membership.
All right, thank you.
But if we can get enough of these T-shirts sold, I can buy into the business partnership, right, by donation and get my logo at the bottom of the website, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, all right, guys.
Exactly.
Go get you a membership and buy a T-shirt at on our website there, and so we get because I want to write a big check to you guys. I'm pretty excited about it.
Oh, awesome! I like that too. I'm excited too.
T-shirts are tough to sell, man. So I'm not guaranteeing it's going to be a big check, but however,
that's all right.
It's coming.
Every dollar helps.
Yeah, for sure.
This
is a great program. You guys have the youth programs. There's all sorts of if you jump on the website, guys, you can look up all the memberships, which it spells it out. It's pretty good deal. I mean, you get hats and stuff out of it. So. Yeah. Government affairs, the foundation, alliance events. There's a blog that's pretty good. Do you write any on the blog there, Brian?
Yeah, that's something that I keep trying to get to. Hopefully I am hiring somebody here pretty quick to help me out because I keep getting sucked into social media, moderating things, and I'm trying to edit things and the alerts, working with everybody. Hopefully we can refresh that blog a little more.
Yeah.
I write all of our magazine content. That's part of the membership perk. And
cool.
You get to read my rantings on different features. The next one's going to be on sporting dogs, which is under attack pretty heavily nationwide.
Man. Well, you just, keep me posted as to, any messaging I can help get out there or anything along those lines. I'd love to. I'm like you, man. I've got a blog on the website there, and I don't think I've personally written an article since summer of last year on that thing, and so I'm way behind the curve here.
It's easy to make them. It's easy to create them. It's hard to keep feeding them. So they become their own monsters sometimes.
It's so much easier for me to just turn on a microphone, and it doesn't come out as good. I learned right away when I started podcasting a little over a year ago that I stutter and I mispronounce words a lot. When I write, none of that happens. It's a lot more clear. It's
very concise too.
Very concise. Yep, for sure. Well, Brian, this has been a great conversation. I think that I would appreciate maybe if we could keep in touch and maybe do this again later in the year, and especially if there's something big news-wise. I've been meaning to reach out to Sportsmen's Alliance for a long time, and I sent that email, and I was just blown away that you were practically my neighbor here in the Northwest, and so that's pretty dang cool. We're going to have to go throw a fly rod around or something here in the near future, but
definitely.
I appreciate you coming on the show. Is there any closing thoughts, anything you want to leave the audience with before we cut this off?
No, it's just, thank you for being good ambassadors, and any support you can give us is great. Online at Sportsmen's Alliance, MENS, sportsmensalliance.org. Yep. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, and the Instagram's pretty busy and entertaining at times.
Yep,
so
look
us up there, and you can see what's happening nationwide in different states. And sooner or later, those things that you see up there are going to come to your state. So It's time to stop it in its tracks before it gets to your state.
That is a super important message that you just said there, and that's why we got so fired up here on my show in Idaho regarding the bear ban, because it starts there and it'll end up. It seems like that could never happen in Idaho, but it can.
They've already tried.
They've already tried, and it can absolutely happen here. So. Now, Brian, great, man. I appreciate it. I think you're a wealth of information that a lot of people could benefit from hearing from. So I appreciate you coming on the show. This has been a great conversation.
You betcha. Thank you very much, and happy to come back anytime.
Awesome. We'll keep in touch.
We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
You made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We sure appreciate your support. This is Jim Huntsman signing off and reminding you to check us out at Instagram at The Western Huntsman and on Facebook at The Western Huntsman. And you can also check out the website at thewesternhuntsman.com. Thanks again. We'll see you guys next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on the mountain.